This is about women and speaking out and taking the reins of leadership perhaps in ways that we haven't seen before. As we know from our teacher, Blue Greenberg, where there is a rabbinic will, there's a halachic way. So today I invite you to pay special attention to the speakers you're about to hear.
You know, there's a basic question which I think we can sometimes think we're beyond, though I think in this conference we're very much aware of the ways in which we're not beyond it, which is who are the leaders, right? In other words, the first question fundamentally, it's the most basic question of thinking about feminism, leadership, and rabbinic authority. Who are the people leading our institutions? And in this context, right, at Chata'ai Ani Mazkir Hayom, I stand at the head of an institution with a team that works together and that co-founded that institution. And despite our best efforts, which I'm happy to share the prehistory with other people at another time, the three co-founders were men. Right? This was an institution that was fundamentally about creating a gender-equal Beit Midrash, a place where everyone would be an equal citizen. You can ask our students if we've lived up to that. I feel very good about that, but there has always been a kind of original, I won't say sin, but original deficiency of beginning to take serious steps. What does it mean to take an institution from one place to another in terms of who its leadership is? I've been spending the past year and a half or so in Israel. I will say one of the things that I am proudest of that we were able to do in that time is I handed over my portfolio both as teaching the upper level Talmud Shiur and effectively my role as the posek for the institution on site to my colleague, Rabbi Aviva Richman. And I would actually say to you, in terms of the leadership piece and transition of the institution, I just want us not to get lost in all of the larger theory pieces of one of the core messages that is critical, which is to advance feminism means having women in positions of authority and power. And short of that, you are always doing some grasping towards that, but never fully realizing it. And one of the things I think I have learned is how important that is, and also the ways in which, if you're actually prepared to take those steps, actual things happen. Things look different on the ground, and I don't need to tell that to this group and to the many distinguished of my colleagues in this room who live that out on a daily basis. That said, though, there are all kinds of other ways in which one can have equality on paper and not have a kind of full manifestation of what it is for people, irrespective of gender, to feel that they are full citizens and full leaders in a community. And this I have encountered in a number of places where I didn't necessarily expect to encounter it. I don't engage that much in the work of conversion, the work of Giyur. For the most part, for me, that is restricted to people who may show up, who want to study at Hadar in an immersive environment, in an immersive fashion. And they show up and they say, there's something not totally together about my status. Either the person has a Jewish father and not a Jewish mother, or there's something that turns out there's a conversion they weren't happy about somewhere back in the family tree. And they'll come and they'll say, I'd like your help in normalizing this. They're already at a place where they are or have committed to being Shomrei Mitzvot. It's not sort of an issue of getting to a place of, is this person ready to step into Judaism? It's really much more of a status clarification. And in terms of my approach to that person, I'm very happy to say to them, let's go to the mikveh tomorrow and pull this together and figure out how we get you into this next step. But often what happens is, coupled with normalizing their status, let's say, for studying at Hadar, is also a desire to kind of kill two birds with one stone and say, well, could I get out of this, at least a credential of conversion or a way I can talk about it that I'll feel good about? And you have smicha from the Rabbanut, and could you pull in a few other people about whom I could say, well, I had a conversion with, with three men with Orthodox smicha. And I have often agreed to this. I always agree to it on some level. There's a person in front of you, and you want to help that person. And this is a way that with all the caveats on the table, you say, I think I can help you. And so I think the right thing to do as a rabbi and as a person to do that is to do that. But in the past few times that has happened, I have begun to ask myself, what are the consequences for my female colleague sitting at the faculty table that I am not asking her to come along to be part of the Beit Din with me? And irrespective of the question of whether she or I or the institution might have a discussion and even an internal understanding that as far as we understood Ben Adam LaMakom, there was a place to talk about women as dayanot in our contemporary world. There was a place of integrating that into an authentic halachic discourse. The fact is the facts in front of us and the person who's asking for help is not interested in that in terms of their individual path. But I have come to realize that there is a cost to that. That is to say, if I were to put it as a general rule, it's very difficult to be marginalized anywhere and not to have the specter of that marginalization manifest everywhere. It's very difficult to be in a space where you have hardwired written into the rules, or even if it's not written into the rules, but into the conventions, a notion that some people, because of their profile, are preferential to others, and it may just even be because of external politics, without that being written back in on some level to the internal culture. And I present that more as a challenge without an answer of how to deal with that. One of the things I think we struggle with, particularly those of us who are committed to being in dialogue with and who are part of the fabric of the world of people who are shomrei mitzvot, who have a range of relationships to the question of feminism, both in theory and practice, you will not be completely insulated from that, no matter how much of a kind of pure gender equal vision you may eventually build. And that's a challenge I think we all have to deal with. The last thing I want to say are the ways in which the support from the environment on the ground, the question of what a community supports, is also a critical element of this. Not so long ago, I was working on an immersive program with some partners where we had agreed as to what the kind of parameters would be in the space in terms of men and women participating equally in learning and their respective roles in tefillah, and the ways in which we could create an environment that would be completely committed to halakha and to mitzvot and feel that it was bringing men and women into the space in an equal way. And we agreed on all the ground rules beforehand, but we were kind of not all of us involved in that project coming from exactly the same spaces. And what that meant, which was that for some of us, the kind of strong tendency or even red line requirements to be in a gender equal direction were kind of almost the terms of our being part of this project. And for others of us, it was an important but risky step. And in the course of kind of running this program, there were a number of the students who were not necessarily 100% fine with all of the decisions we had made, or they were nervous about it or wondering where this was going to take them. And a discussion came up among the faculty, among the people running the program. Well, should we have some kind of vote, some kind of plebiscite among the students of what they would or wouldn't be comfortable with? Sure, the faculty has decided X, Y, and Z are okay as a matter of halakha, but maybe the community isn't ready for it. And one of the things that became very clear was even the notion of this being in the air among the students ended up undermining to some degree the confidence of the women in that shared space, of feeling they had the sufficient backing to step up and participate as equals and as leaders in various roles. Because, and this is I think one of the trickiest things for those of us who are part of this vision of advancing gender equality and also committed to the eternal conversation of Torah and the eternal yoke of mitzvot, is on some level, most of us who are in that latter camp are fundamentally conservative people who don't like to ruffle feathers, who don't like to be rebels, and who don't like to be upending tables. But it is very hard to ask someone of that sort to step up and do something new and doing something innovative unless there is sort of total support for this being the right move at this moment. And the second there's a sense of, well, maybe there's people in the community who aren't happy for this, and you're going to in some way make space for that unhappiness, on some level you actually take away the support and potentially the backbone of the person willing to take that risk. And that too I offer without a clear answer of what's the right solution in any given context, but I think we have to recognize that one of our challenges when we think about these leadership questions is not just who's in charge, not just how do we write the rules, but also how do we model those rules, and what kinds of things ultimately we tolerate as being part of the kind of acceptable hand-wringing in our communities. Because at the end of the day, as much as I think it is difficult for us, there is to some degree a zero-sum game between allowing a sort of open angst about certain issues in terms of how we move forward, and the ability to actually empower people and give them the kind of courage and security to move forward and play a certain kind of role. I'll leave it there for now, but I hope that'll give some basis for some discussion and questions. Turn it over to my colleague.
It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to have been here many years ago to talk about some of our religious dreams together. The first time I came about 16 years ago to speak at JOFA, I spoke about Rabbi Twersky, Rabbi Meiselman, Rabbi Cook, about their attitudes specifically towards about women's tefillah and women's participation. We spoke about the meta-halachic ideologies that came in to their psak. 2 years later, after we had started Shira Hadasha, JOFA had many, many sessions, and for quite a few years, there was discussion between people in JOFA about is it allowed or isn't it allowed? And there were rabbis of all sorts who were talking about whether it was allowed or not. And it was very, very important then for JOFA to have rabbis discussing whether it was okay or not. There were other people who could talk about the halachic backing of it, different kinds of ways of thinking about it, but that conversation was very central to the identity of what JOFA was. And I remember then, even then, feeling confused. And I was confused between two terms. One was something, what I would call halachic integrity, and the other was something that we would call a psak halakha by a rabbi. And a part of me, and I think I've written about this and I've shared it, felt there was fundamentally a lie in having this rabbinic conversation for me. I'm not talking about for other people, I'm talking about just for myself. And I think I would use the term that Virginia Woolf uses in 3 Guineas when she speaks about adultery of the brain. And I think that I knew we were going to start Shira Hadasha that time in my living room. We were a group of people who knew that this is what we wanted to do, this is what we needed to do for our religious lives, to have integrity, to bring our children up in a world that took davening seriously, that took community seriously, and it was just something that we were going to do. At that meeting, 2 groups broke off. There was a group that said, we cannot continue to be part of this because there is no Gadol Hador or a rabbi who supports this. And there was another group who left because it was not completely egalitarian, and they told me then that I had betrayed all of my feminist values and ideals. And I wanted to put it out here because when we speak about leadership, when we speak about rabbinic education, when we speak about what now that we have, that things have shifted, that it would be almost like funny now for us at JOFA to have a group of people saying it's not allowed to daven in any kind of Shira Hadasha style minyan, and those having that conversation, well, it really is allowed. And I wanted to know what happened. What happened that we don't have that conversation here now? Did we have to go through listening to some rabbis telling us that it's really not okay? We care about you, we understand, but it's not okay. What is the role of our relationship with this rabbinic class that has been used to giving permission to other people? Is that what we want still? Is that who we want to be our leaders? And then as such, how do we decide who will be our leader, who won't be? Do we give them litmus tests about what? How learned they are? When do rabbis stop being rabbis as poskim? So I think that that one of the real questions, or one of the significant questions we have to ask is really, what is the role now of rabbis? Given that, in all honesty, we started something without a rabbi. And do we afterwards say, oh, now somebody came along and now it's the best? I will always tell people, you know, you should learn from this book and from that book. We can learn so much. But in all honesty, there was no rabbi there. And are we going to move now completely to a place where rabbis will be our teachers? That we look to them for leadership, for teachers? And what is the place of psak in this kind of discourse? Again, it's something that I would like to just put out there. I'm not saying what we should do or not, but I think it's a very important question because it's not, it's not that clear. And if we want to be bemet internally honest with ourselves, and not add a little hechsher afterwards, it's not a little button that we add onto things. So I really do want to ask, what is the meaning of smicha now? What is the meaning of ordaining an elite group who will be our leaders? What do they need to know in order for us to say we accept you as leaders? And at what point do we say, I'm sorry? And in some way you can say it's easy when, I don't want to go into it now, but I'm just saying like the sexual abuse stuff in some way was easy. And even that I was surprised that it wasn't even so easy. But it was so clear who cannot be and who can be a religious leader. So that sort of made things fuzzy as to what are the other things. And when do we listen? And when don't we listen? And what is the meaning of not listening? And I would like just at this point to put it out there for you, and I would love to, I hope we'll have some questions that we can continue talking about it. What does it mean now that we have, there are many more people now who are engaged in religious leadership, who are getting smicha, who I think are asking this question together with me. Thanks.
Dr. Hartman spoke about who the next generation of decisors will be, who are the rabbis who are coming up, and Rabbi Tucker spoke about the constraints that seem to be put on the female students at Hadar, and maybe other students as well, when permissibility gets questioned. So, both of you, fascinatingly, to me fascinating, I'm not a rabbi, I'm not a scholar, I'm a magazine editor, so I'm curious, what are the effects of having new models of leadership, Tovah Hartman starting Shira Hadasha, feeling strong enough to say, we're doing it. There is no halachic authority standing by to give a hechsher on this. How do young people react? How do young women feel tremendously empowered by that, or disempowered, of course, by the question, is it permitted? So, questions, comments, please.
I definitely believe that the halakha is up to the task, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be giving so much of my life to believing that it really is up to task, and to deeply believing that there are many people who are not who just don't believe that it is up to the task. Maybe that's really what it is. And I remember I said this a long time ago, that when I was giving a talk about Shira Hadasha and about feminism and Judaism in Van Leer, and I compared it to Zionism and religion, and I said that Zionism was not given at Sinai, and neither was feminism given at Sinai, but these are both two very incredible movements that believed in a more whole way of living Jewishly. And it also divided the Jewish people in half, those who felt that Zionism was going to be the end of the Jewish people, and those who also will feel that feminism is the end of the Jewish people if we adopt it. And in this way, it really is divided. And I remember one of the men in the audience, a professor of Jewish law, got up and just said, Tovah. And I'll translate it. He said, Zionism is from God, and feminism is from the Goyim. And you know, at first I admit, it's not that I'm so naive, or maybe I actually probably am still very naive. I didn't think that I understood. So I started having this sort of rational conversation. You know, do you mean Zionism as like the Gvulot in the Tanakh, but not like 19th century nationalism? Like I was going on, and I realized like I was really off. And what we believe to be given from God in that way, without moving into the Rav Kook's, what is, you know, revelation all the time, because I get like scared because there are those who feel that this is revelation and that's not revelation, and then what do we do? But I think that many of us do believe really in our hearts, in our minds, in our bodies, that feminism is from God in all that it stands for and can stand for in terms of living Jewishly, fully, communally, as parents, as children, and how do we build a better Jewish community. So I do believe deeply that halakha is up to the task. It's not, but I also know that there's a few things there in that halakha that are not that attractive and that are very, very painful and hurtful to anybody anybody who begins to read. There's ugliness there. There's horrible things that you just don't even want. You say, no, we can't have our kids read that. That's worse than pornography. They should not be studying these way that that it's even written about other people, about other religions, but halakha has changed, and it has developed, and it has evolved, and it can be better. And if we believe in it, I think it can. I would like to say one other thing. When someone asked here, how do I know if what I'm doing in my kitchen is okay? Now, I'm not saying this for a generation of people who are starting to become halachic, but when we announced anybody who has a question as to what they should eat and what they should do, please call their mother and their grandmother. And then if you still have struggles, then we'll be happy to learn with you.
Thank you so much.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.